All right, so I'm so pumped to one, do this podcast. It's been a passion project for a long time, and two, to do it with you. You know how I feel about you. You're one of my all-time kind of mentors, best buddies, somebody that's always inspired me and still inspiring me to be kind of the best version of myself. And so excited to have you out.
Thank you, Casey. I've always told you I feel the same, man.
Yeah.
I think who was I talking to? I was yesterday at lunch. I was with a buddy of mine. Man, like you boil down life and it all comes down to like relationships, family and friends, like relationships. Obviously health, need that, want that, don't always control that, but like relationships drive happiness.
And the further you go, the more important it gets. It's like, I think there's points in life where I'm like desperate. And I'm like, I just need to go.
Yeah.
Like the only thing that matters is making a little bit of money to get by, in that window. But I think as like life progresses and you realize like there's nothing that matters except we did that MW3 conference, and you've got Gail Miller that gets up, and her quote that just, I can't unhear it. She's like, Larry said, my wealth is what I have if I lost everything. And he's like, it's my health, it's my family, it's my faith.
Yeah.
And he's like, and I know if I had to go sell apples, I'd sell more apples than anybody else. And that was his mentality. He's like, I know how to work.
Yeah.
I know how to produce. I've got relationships, and that's really what I have. Yeah. And it's that, and you've been just one of those special guys for me. And I think it's going back to the roots. And the purpose of this podcast is like to document the gold. It's like, how do you really go deep and say, what are like those lessons? What are when you really boil down, and for you, it's 30 years of a career at this point. How do you boil that down into like these were the things, like one, these were the moments, these were the crossroads that you didn't know they were the crossroads at the time, but they were the crossroads. The second, like what were like the principles, like the operate off of, and how do you capture those and share those to that next generation so they don't have to like bang their head against the wall and make those same mistakes? And one thing that I've heard you say 100 times, and I think this is probably a good place to start, is I've heard people ask you the question of, what would you do different if you were to go start over? And every single time the answer is the same. It's, I would have dreamed bigger,
faster.
Yeah. Bigger, faster.
Yeah.
So maybe let's start there. I mean, like,
the one thing I would say is I appreciate even the outcome that we've had to this point. We're not done yet, but things have gone better than expected when I first started, with work. And I'd say even better than expected, like with family and everything else. Like I don't know, I didn't have low expectations, but I don't know if I thought deep enough into that stuff. But there's no doubt, the older I've gotten and the more experience that I have, and maybe it just comes through, knowledge and experience. The part that if you say, what did you fail at? I just didn't dream big fast enough, because you were around in a time where I was starting to say things like, hey, we're going to build $1 billion company. And what did people say about that?
They laughed. I mean,
everyone laughed.
Almost laughed you out of the room. Especially competitors.
Competitors. And, part of it's like not daring to think, big enough soon enough. And I think that's always driven by like fear of failure.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was necessarily mine. Some of it was just, I was trying to survive. I mean, year in, year out, we didn't have investors. We had cash flow or not.
Bootstrapping it. Yeah.
Total bootstrapping. But even with that, I think back on some of the decisions made when we made them, and just hesitating on pushing the envelope and expecting more out of myself and expecting more out of people around me, and really laying the groundwork, the vision for people to go accomplish something. Because I think if that happens, if there's a leader that says, here's the end in mind, this is why, and creates that, that passion for it, people go they want that. They want to drive.
My exact experience coming to Vivint was company I was working with went out of business. I'd never met you before. And I met you, and I still remember it's funny because I was so confident in your success, but like the outward like relics wouldn't yell tons of success. You're renting a house, had a 10-year-old truck.
Yeah.
But you had a really successful business. But I remember sitting down with you and you said, we're going to go build $1 billion business. And if you come and if you get on board, you'll have upside in this. And it was those two things. It was one, where we're going. And it was two, that I could be a part of it. And it was like this irresistible offer. I was like, you're telling me you're going to take it to the moon and that I can like help. And it changed me as a 24-year-old kid. I'm like, I was too good to knock doors. I thought that was beneath my skill set. Which I don't know what my skill set was, but I didn't have any skills, but knocking doors was beneath the skills I didn't have.
I remember.
But it wasn't beneath the skills that you had. Like for you, you completely respected that profession, the people who did it, you were proud of it. And I remember just being like, it's good enough for Todd. It's good enough for me. Like if he's signing up for it, and that was, and so like when you're talking about the leader crafting, I wouldn't have come to Vivint if you wouldn't have like dreamed big. Yeah. And for me, like $1 billion, I was like, I don't even know what that means.
Sounded crazy back then. I mean, it really didn't happen. Funny enough, I had a gentleman at my office today. We're talking about doing this pretty cool project from an investment perspective. Anyway, and he said, hey, I remember driving down the freeway, hearing the announcements. I don't know how he heard it necessarily, that you'd sold equity in a company at a $2 billion valuation. He said, I almost crashed. He's like, that was just unheard of.
I mean,
unheard of.
2012.
Yeah, 2012, unheard of.
Yeah.
And, yet we knew we were going to get there. We absolutely knew it. Just didn't know how soon and how fast. But again, I really believe had I backed up 10 years and had driven with that kind of confidence, it wouldn't have been 2, it would have been 5.
Yeah.
And the exit at the end wouldn't have been 5 would have been 10. It just, there weren't a lot of like, companies that were really kind of leading the way.
I mean, I always like felt like, how do I get a front row seat at this? Like from Logan, Utah.
Yeah.
And I get a front row seat at securitized debt, taking us like leveraged buyout from Blackstone, setting up an LTIP, starting a company, splitting it out, taking it public.
Yeah. Forming a hardware business.
Splitting out a hardware business, selling it, going, failed processes to sell the core business.
When you say that, it makes me realize that it's a good thing we were dumb enough to do those things.
It's crazy.
Because we had no business in any of those things. I mean, high yield debt that we were running, we didn't know what we were doing, how to do it. We just had to like ask questions and make it happen. And I think that was the beauty of everything, is we really were not smart enough. And I say this with total sincerity, not smart enough to realize we shouldn't be able to do it. We just had confidence, and we knew you mentioned Larry Miller being willing to like sell apples. We were going to sell better than anyone else sold, work harder than anyone else would work. And we were relentless in making sure that we hit the goals that we set, and we always surpassed them.
But you guys always told the truth. And I think that was like, in a world where people don't tell the truth, or they sugarcoat, or they spruce it up a little bit. And it was always something that I remember. It was 2009, and it was my second year at Vivint, and it was like peak global financial crisis. Like we were in, I don't think there was no end in sight to how this thing was going to go play out. And I still remember we went to Vegas, and for me, I was in like this little bubble. I was out in Dallas, Texas. We were having a good summer. Was excited about the future, and I wasn't seeing this macro picture. I was really focused.
Yeah.
And I remember going to this meeting in Dallas, and you got up
in Vegas
in front of all of our sales leaders, and you said, we can't raise money. If we don't raise money, we're going to have to lay off half the sales force. And that was the message of the meeting. And it wasn't a negative message. It was a honest message, and you treated us like partners. And I still remember, like, it was like this, like, I'm a part of this, and let's gear up, let's saddle up, let's go do whatever it takes to get through it. And we got through it, and it wasn't pretty. Like, it was like taking expensive debt.
There was like, well, not only that, I don't know if you remember this, but we made massive adjustments inside the company, like pay scales. Everyone's it was hard. Installers took pay cuts. Everyone took pay cuts, and it was all for, we're doing it all for all of us.
When no one else was willing to do it. I still remember
the truth.
All of our competitors were like, oh, that's crazy. They're cutting pay. We're not cutting pay.
Yeah.
And then they cut it, you know, and it's after the people go out for it was this.
They cut pay or just didn't pay.
Didn't pay. Yeah, both those things. But it was one of those things where I just remember, I mean, I was there 14 or 15 years, but it was those early years where you're in the crossroads, and it was scary. There's one time Alex Dunn's like staring out the window, like everybody else has left the conference room, and he's in a chair just staring out the window. And I was like, hey, are you
Makes
gonna?
My stomach hurt.
I'm like, are you gonna jump? And he's like,
there's no balcony. I've already looked. But you know, the funny thing is, like, as much as I didn't like going through that, I don't know why I always had this crazy confidence because of the people that we were surrounded by.
Yeah.
Like, we could go through anything as a group because we had an amazing, I mean, if you can't reassemble a leadership team and a sales organization, and I'd even say like operations
but it was a band of misfits. But I think that was the magic of it. It was like, but if like a can do.
But if you went to war, like actual war, which I feel bad for anyone who has to, that's the group you would go with.
It's your like foxhole buddies, like people that to the end. I mean, because anybody who wasn't that left, like they ran for the hills
or accepted. They listened to someone, you know, telling them things that weren't true, and we said they weren't true, and they chased it because it sounded better.
Yeah.
But you know, I really think, you know, like in business, every business goes through cycles. I mean, ups and downs and different things. And businesses survive because of the people driving the business, not because of the macroeconomics of whatever industry they're in or the world or whatever. It's the people driving, because there's always a solution. There's always a solution. It's just that sometimes people don't want to face the music, make hard decisions, or in that circumstance, it was ask people to
do hard things,
major adjustments, and do hard things.
Yeah.
And it was almost like weird because I felt like people were excited about it. Like,
I think they were excited because you were telling the truth.
Yeah.
Like I know for me, like I remember you came and said, hey, we're going to cut pay scales. And it was like going to our group and saying, hey, it doesn't mean it's a pay cut. It just means it's lower pay scale. But we're going to go make more money.
Yeah.
We got to go work harder.
And you did.
And we did. But it was like, hey, this is the new rules.
Yeah.
Let's build a plan and let's go. And, you know, I just think there was this trust that you guys weren't like, hey, go do this, put it in our pocket. There was always this trust that like we're a team.
Yeah.
And the longer that I go in business, you just see founders that do what's right for them and not for their people consistently. Like you just like,
I see it all the time.
It's almost irresistible.
I'm invested in some of those companies where, it's a great company and hopefully the outcome's great, but even the investors and the employees, it's like they're last to the trough.
Yeah.
And I just don't think I never wanted to operate like that or act like that or do anything would make people perceive that.
Yeah.
And one thing I just want to make sure I say, like, you know, Alex Dunn, I mean, he was like side by side through those years. Keith Nelson in the earlier years. And I look back at the people that were, call it my partners inside of the business. I knew for a fact that they would never cut corners.
They didn't run for the hills. And I think that was like, Keith was before me.
Yeah.
But I heard the legends of like, hey, let's go get the mortgage on our house again.
Yep.
Let's go rip the credit line. Like, you guys were all in every year.
No paychecks for
Ships
months
in the
and
middle
months and months.
every year. And that was just like, and maybe it was like that venture community didn't exist at that point. Kind of, there's more of a playbook today of like, hey, this is what early stage seed looks like. And, then you go get this firm, and you guys just didn't do that playbook.
It was early, with venture and private equity. But on top of that, we're a door-to-door company. And back then people still make fun of it. Behind the scenes, I hear it in the Valley still with, CEOs and executives like, like, Vivint, whatever, but they're a door-to-door company. Funny enough, a lot of their companies are run, their sales organizations, by door-to-door guys.
For sure.
They're top performers. They're top performers in leadership. I mean, that's just what it is. But, we had something special going on. And from that, the one thing that I've really loved is just seeing and sometimes just hearing about businesses that are built on the back of the concept that we
100%.
Perfected, with the people that we did. And it's been, there's lighting companies, there's satellite companies, there's, a massive window washing company now that's direct to home sales. Huge industries that have been created, obviously solar.
Well, that's like one aspect of it. The second one is the hundreds of thousands of people that went through that program, didn't do it as a career, but went on and owned 5 dentistries or like that took those skills and went and started businesses with like this core foundational skill of being able to lead people, sell, manage a schedule, produce revenue.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like, so you have the industry, but then you have like the leaders that were trained that we see it all day, every day. Like our investors that invest with us were people that were door-to-door reps and now built $100 million company.
Yeah.
And then it's vice versa. It's like, the people who succeeded in that just succeed. It's incredible how like that just goes with them, that resiliency and that ability to sell apples, if you will, or like I can just go put on my hard hat and go produce revenue.
Casey, it makes me actually think about like, just the core of what we were involved with for that many years. It was personal development. People call it door-to-door, as direct sales, whatever. It was personal development. It's the one platform in business that if someone is willing to do really hard things, stretch themselves. You know how hard the job is. It is the hardest job. But if they're willing to do it, the growth that they get from a skill perspective, confidence perspective, business perspective, there is no, and I'll say this very loudly, not a single college degree, university that can give better skills in such a short period of time as going out and doing that job.
I remember, like, I'll ask like a question, like when I'm doing trainings with groups, and I'm like, who's cried on the doors? And a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I can remember like being in my truck just broken. Like I got broke that day. Or like being on the doors and some guy just like emotionally, like I was at the end and some guy just comes out and just goes and it just breaks me. And I'm just like,
I remember you telling me that one.
I'm done. You got me. Good job. Like
didn't some guy apologize to you? He
gave me a hug and like gave me a root beer. Like, man, I love it. I pushed that with too far, but it's amazing how common it is. Like when you say like it pushes you to your breaking point, it's a pressure cooker that gets all of you. But I think when I think about my life today, I'm like that emotional fitness that I got for those years, you could take everything away from me and I'd still have a lot of confidence.
Yeah.
Because I just know like
it's funny you say that, Casey, like, I don't think it is much anymore, but I've got this weird mentality where I'm like, man, what if I lost everything? It's somewhat intriguing. When I say everything, not my family, but financially, I know I could go do it again.
Yeah,
I just know I could, because it requires the effort. And that, you said, what are the things that I've learned over the years? And one is you've got to be willing to do the things you don't want to do. And that sometimes includes extra hours, extra, focus on the individual, which, when we're inside of a big organization, it's easy to see people as the masses. It's like, oh, wow, there's 12,000 employees. No, there's 12,000 people. They're individuals. In case you were one of the masters because of your big heart, like people followed you because you were open to them as an individual. And, others in business or in leadership, I don't think like some leaders see people as people. It's an employee.
I think
I
think it's easier to not see them as people.
Probably
more efficient. You don't need to worry about feelings, or you can kind of just plow through.
Yeah.
You don't need to it takes real energy to engage. Like listening's hard.
Yeah.
Like to really listen. And I was actually going to ask you that same question because it feels like, one, it's your superpower. Like anybody who knows you knows, like, Todd makes me feel like I'm the most important person in the world. Everybody feels like they're your best friend. Like everybody.
Well, that's good. I mean, I'm glad.
It's a gift.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, it's a superpower. Is it natural or is it developed? Because
I mean, I don't know. I mean,
because it's completely sincere.
No, there
is no technique. It is
one of my biggest, ask my kids, my biggest problem is when I go into the grocery store, it's 4 hours.
Can't get out.
And I don't know why I love talking to people. Like I'm so intrigued. I don't know why. I don't care what the status of the person is, the job, where the background, where they've come from. Like I want to know what makes people tick.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like I'm always interested in what people are interested in. Like, and people talk to me about the most random things. And it's always intriguing to me. I'm like, I don't think like that, or I don't have those types of questions or thoughts in my mind, but that's interesting. I don't know. It's probably somewhat developed from working with people, but some people thought it slowed me down.
No, I remember like you had like leadership
executives
did not like that you'd spend an hour with a first-year sales rep.
Or someone at the call center.
Yeah.
Like we had a CFO, won't name his name. He's like, hey man, like he had been on for, I don't know, a year. He's like, you waste so much time meeting with everyone. Like you'll meet with anyone. And if someone stops you in the hallway, your spiel spent 30 minutes. And I'm like, well, yeah, but they wanted to talk to me and they probably have something to say that's important about the business.
I remember reading this, I still am like a complete Stephen Covey fanboy, like that. His stuff changed my life for sure. But there was one kind of principle he talked about. He talked about the key to the 99 is the one. And he talked about kind of the story of Christ and the 99 sheep and going after the one, and how like the way that you treat the one, especially the one that's like not the main one, communicates to the 99 that they're important. And I just saw that with you. Still see that like you go to the one, and the way that you're sincere and treat, whether it's the gas station attendant or whether it's the waitress or whether it's the caddy at the golf course or whatever, the way that you treat the one actually communicates to everybody else that they're special too. And you've got a lot of admirable qualities. I think it's your most admirable. It's for sure like it's a superpower and it's a gift, and it's for me it's like, if I'm really smart, it's that I'm good at copying stuff that works for people that I admire. And that's one that I'm like, okay, I want to be good at that, because one, it just makes people feel awesome, and it's like really effective. I've just seen you run the table in business because people like you and they like want to do business with you. They want to have you around,
I that's nice of you to say.
It's just true.
I do know, for me, like really, really early on, I don't know why. I wanted people, like if people trusted me, I wanted them to win. Like the last thing I want to do with someone is disappoint them if they're committing. Well, one, if I'm telling them something and I don't live up to it, that's probably the worst thing I can possibly do.
Yeah.
And you mentioned like, just having, being honest. I always, this is going to sound super random, but my main driver in that was my wife. Like, I never wanted someone ever to approach my wife and say, Todd told me this, but this is what was real. Or Todd promised this, and this was the outcome. So it's kind of, you say, now, what are the little nuggets? I mean, those are some of the nuggets. Like I have, I think I do. Hopefully, honey, you're still with me. She was like 20 minutes ago. But I have a wife that, like, she would go to the ends of the earth to support whatever I was trying to do and be part of it in a positive way. And I just didn't want to disappoint her. Like, that was one of my main drivers of success, is I didn't want to disappoint Andy. Not that she would have been disappointed, but it was, something created in my mind. But it's definitely from an integrity perspective. Like, I would tell people all the time, I'm like, because they dispute what we would say, recruiting them, trying to, and I'm like, I can assure you that no amount of money or anything, or you coming on, is worth you coming back after the summer and saying you lied about whatever this was and what it was supposed to be and what it was actually, and tell my wife that I misled you. So, I would say, like, a lot of the motivation that I've had in life was that. And then obviously when I got my family and, wanted to make sure that I lived in the most respectable way I could. Not that I'm perfect, but, those are motivators. And lastly, and this was lastly was how much money we're going to make.
You're a money-making machine. Like, you like making money.
No. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love making money.
Like, I haven't seen too many people that can structure a deal like you can structure them. I mean, you're really good at it. So it's not about like that's more you're hardcore capitalist.
But
like, you are.
But that's more like art. I love art of the deal.
Yeah.
I have fun negotiating and digging in on.
But it
stuff
wasn't
like
at the
that.
expense ever of people.
No, I hope
it
not.
was, how do we create value?
Yeah.
How do we optimize value? And I think that's the difference between the two. It's like, you got somebody that likes to make money, and I'm going to cut and carve and piece out as much as I can get for me, regardless of who else benefits. And that was just, it was never your mentality. And I think it's the reason why so many people stayed with you for so long. You think, like, what's the average career today?
Oh, I mean, at Vivint now?
Anywhere.
Oh, in any career?
2 years?
Oh, yeah.
3 years, 5 years?
Cycle,
like,
it's pretty fast. And our leadership was
forever
in the teens.
No, it was.
Since they were 20. I mean, they stayed 15,
half of us
17.
had to, like, kick us out.
Yeah.
Like, it was like, hey,
time to.
It's time.
Well, I remember you, Casey. That's you. It's like, hey, you guys got something rolling. You guys should go.
You got to
pursue this.
You got to get out the door. You'd
still be good at knocking doors, though.
I'd still be good.
Yeah,
I loved it, man. Like, I remember going home and, like, being like, babe, I get more spirituality out of, like, my job than I do from church. Like, and she's like, what's she talking about? Like, and I'm like, I don't know what it is. And over time, I've actually, like, put language around it, and I know what it is. And I feel the closest to God when I'm personally growing a lot. And that's when things are hard, when you're getting challenged. And 2, when I'm serving at a high level, like when I'm really giving myself to the people, and that, whether it's my mission or and that profession just got so much of that. Like, you were giving your heart and soul to people.
Sometimes you get stomped on.
Always.
But that was just part of the deal.
I mean, I laughed at that. Somebody was talking about it the other day, and they're like, oh, Todd's so generous. I'm like, I've seen Todd get taken advantage of more than anybody else that I've ever met. I'm like, he's not naive when people are taking advantage of him. Like,
I think people think I am.
I think they do. They're like, oh, I just pulled a fast one on him. And I'm like, it's not that. He gives. He gives everything.
I've always thought, man, no, you focus on negative things and go chase stuff that, didn't go the right way, or, what was promised. Man, it just brings negativity in life. And there's more to be had by focusing on the future and the positive than worrying about the past and things that didn't go the right way, or people that were compromised, whatever deal was structured. So, and I think that's actually true. Even like managing a business. I mean, you have personal interactions with people all the time. And this, we had very diverse personality base.
Hard.
And man, if you weren't willing to let things go that have happened in the past.
If you were like an idealist,
yeah,
it'd be a really hard,
impossible.
Yeah,
almost impossible. So
I remember that time after time. Like, can you? I not going to name names, but I remember one of the big deciding factors for me to come to Vivint. There was a guy who worked for you, and I'm sure he'd be fine. It's Cade Smith, but Cade didn't work for you at the time. And I'm at a baseball game, I'm at a BYU baseball game, and I'm talking to Cade, and I'm like, "Hey, so what type of guy is Todd?" And he literally just tears up, and he's like, "I'll tell you what type of guy Todd is." He's like, "We were in a summer, and I had a team, and I took that team, left, and went to work at another company because I got a better deal. So I left Todd in a bad spot, like at a point where it hurt Todd. And we had, I think it was their second child, and they had complications with the baby, lost the baby, and also his wife lost the ability to have kids. And he didn't have insurance. And he's like, Todd showed up to the hospital, asked me, one, how I was doing, and then two, what the bill was, and he covered the bill. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, well, that's incredible. And it was like, okay, where do I sign? Because it's like, but that's an advantage or an example of like, yeah, just how many of those were there? People that bounced on you or wronged you or left
Some
you,
of my friends hated,
and then came full circle and like,
some of my friends hate it. I'm like, I don't know why I'm like that. I mean, it's in some ways it got me in trouble.
It hurt you at
company.
times. Yeah, it hurt you at times.
It ended up kind of ending my career because I loved second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh chances. Now, if someone was just straight, dishonest, different. But some people were dishonest out of being naive. They didn't know they were doing something wrong. They just didn't have any experience in business. But
when I look back at Vivint would not have been Vivint without that.
I agree. I totally agree.
It never would have made it.
I don't regret it.
Yeah.
I don't regret it, even though, the last year of the business, it consumed my life because of someone I rehired and made it very, very difficult having to deal with some of the things I had to deal with that they weren't choices I made. They weren't decisions I made. I was the CEO. It caused major conflict with my board. And still, if you ask me, would you reverse that and change that? I still wouldn't.
Yeah.
Even the decisions, man, I wouldn't do it because, I believe in people. I think you believe in people. People believed in me. I mean, I was a Yahoo growing up.
You think that's it? Like when you really boil it down, do you think second chances?
Yeah.
Because you got second
people
chances?
People believed in me. I'd had people believe in me, and let me process through life. My parents were some of those people. My parents did it in a different way. They just kind of stayed out of, when I say stay out of my way, I'm not being disrespectful, but they just let me do my thing without forcing anything on me. They always explained to me consequences and, right and wrong and all that, and were the best examples. But I was a personality that you weren't going to make me do anything because I'd go the opposite direction. So I have a ton of respect from that. I feel bad about what they had to deal with me. But then my mission president, Gary Sorensen, he's a Logan
guy,
lives in paradise now. Like that guy. I mean, we butted heads like no mission president, missionary probably ever have. Butted heads, but we also like loved each other, and he like believed in me to the point where I'm like, he believes in me so much, I better believe in myself.
Yeah.
And I think honestly, like in life, I feel bad when people aren't in a circumstance where there's someone around them that can either inspire them or believe in them or give them a little bit of hope, a little bit of hand holding here and there, sometimes a little bit of scolding, whatever it is, because not everyone does. But people, I think everyone inside of them, they want to succeed. And that doesn't mean be wealthy necessarily, but succeed, like you said, in life. It's like, how do I expand my capabilities? I
mean, you were that guy for me.
Thanks, Casey.
You and Alex were those guys for me for sure.
But you got it done. I don't know if you remember this, man, but you got it done. I remember you very early when we were talking about you knocking doors. You're like, okay, Well, can I manage? No, you haven't knocked doors yet. Well, what if I sell 50 accounts? And what if I bring recruits and we do 200 accounts? I think that was the number, 50 and 200. Well, geez, if you do that preseason, you can manage. You did it. And then it was like, well, who's made the most money in the summertime? What's that number? How did they do it? And you went and interviewed a ton of people, and you just went out and got it. So we believe in you because
the desire was never the problem.
Yeah.
But I didn't believe in myself. Like there was windows where I'm like, can I do this?
Yeah.
And I still remember you guys like saying, you got this.
Yeah.
And it was all I needed. I didn't need you to knock the doors for me. I didn't need you to like go do I do any work.
Yeah.
You know, and I've found that I remember Jeff Curl came out and spoke to our group, and he articulated it in a way that just made so much sense to me. And I'm seeing that now raising kids, where he's like, when you're really young, you know, your parents have the most influence with you. And then you kind of transition into like these teenage years, and it shifts from your parents to your peers.
Yeah.
And you really want them to care about you and, you know, validate you. But he's like, there's this period where you kind of become a young professional. And he's like, if you have a leader that believes in you, that will be a gift and it will change your life. And he talked about an experience that he had where I think it was Stephen Covey believed in him at like a young age and kind of validated him. And he said it changed my entire career. And you're talking about a Gary Sorensen. And again, it was you guys, it was you and Alex that I remember you guys just caring so much that I worked for the company. And I was like, I will not let these guys down. I would rather die on the tracks than let these guys down. And money was part of it, but it was more just like, I just won't like, and
fun times.
And I've seen that, like, you know, you were on Zach Anderson's podcast and you see like this circle of life where you see that next generation coming up and then they do the hard thing and then it changes their life.
Yeah. And
it's really beautiful. Like, it's like,
you know, I mean, like, I don't know who all's listening to this podcast and whatnot, but like, the one thing that makes me concerned about like this newest generation of people, you know, people in the workforce is their lack of willingness to work hard.
Yeah.
Like which makes, you know why it makes me sad? Because hard work is so fun. When you're done with the hardest day, the longest, hardest day or week or months or year, it's like you go to bed feeling really satisfied.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you're not worried and have stress and that whatnot, but you go to bed full. It's like, you know, the days where I was the most tired, I was the most satisfied.
Proud. Yeah.
It's like I got up at 6:30, hit the gym, went to work right from the get-go, and went to bed at 2:30.
Yeah.
And did it again and did it again and did it again and did it again. I mean, those were the most satisfying. It doesn't mean every single day was net positive. I mean, things happen and disruptions happen, but just attacking the problems and coming up with solutions.
Yeah.
And fighting the fight, man, that's when true happiness happens from a work perspective. And then results come. Yeah. Which is so, you know, my dad, I think, I know I've told you this probably, but my dad had a quote, a handwritten quote on a 5x7 card that faded over the years. It's had the same one. It was just stuck to the wall. It wasn't framed or anything. And the quote was, life responds to effort. And I read that thousands of times, because every time I sat at his desk, it was right in front of his desk, his cheap little wood desk he had, just taped right to the wall. And that is the truest fact, that life responds to effort. I think people want life to respond to their wishes or their desires, their wants, their needs. It doesn't. It doesn't respond to that. It responds to the effort you put in. Every single time, it's a total fact. And, you know, if anyone listening to this can figure out how to work hard and work smart too. I mean, working hard, you know, putting a lot of hours in with no goals or, you know, really objectives. Yep. You're probably spinning your wheels. For sure. You got to know what your end in mind is. You got to know the pathway to get there, know how to make the adjustments. But without hard work, man, nothing good comes. So that's the thing that I, you know, as I kind of have watched 30 years of change of patterns of behavior, it's the work ethic that I'm like, this is not good.
Not a good sign.
But the people, the younger generation now that do have work ethic and drive and, the desire to succeed and whatever, they're going to win easier because they don't have as much competition.
Yeah.
That's another fact. So in some ways, it's like, this is probably a great time to be born if you've got it, because you're going to go and get it. You're going to go win.
I mean, you think about living in 2023 and the resources.
No, it's crazy.
It's like the ability to create, and that's a Tony Robbins. He would always, he says, resources are never the problem. It's the lack of resourcefulness.
Yeah.
It's taking the ingredients around you and saying, I'm going to take this and build a plan, and then just go take a ton of action, and then adjust and adjust and adjust. And so maybe talk to me about that, because, you've kind of gone through cycles. You go through I'm an early founder cycle, and you're just bootstrapping and like drinking out of a fire hose.
Yeah.
Every year different, new crisis, trying not to make the same mistakes. And then you kind of went into a phase where you build a great business, exited, a number of businesses. Yep. And now you're kind of at like this next chapter. Like, what do you love about it? What do you love about kind of looking back, but still like with a lot of sprint?
Yeah. Well, funny enough, like the first year retirement sounds like such a bad word to me, but stepping down from Vivint was hard, because like I didn't know what to do. I was used to like fighting fires
all day,
stress seeping out of my ears,
but kind of addicted to it. Right?
Yeah. And I loved the stress.
Yeah.
The more problems, the more clear my brain works actually still. Like if I have things coming at me, I'm like, it's clarity.
Yeah.
When not much is going on, I'm like,
doesn't challenge you as much.
What's going on. So there was a period of time, I had to do a bunch of surgeries, where I'm like, okay, I'm getting back. I'm going to get back in the saddle. I'm getting after this with full support of my wife and my kids. And then, a transition happened where I started really, really thinking about, this is not morbid, but my age.
Yeah.
I'm turning 55. Is it next week or the week after? Something like that. Next week? Is it next week? The 23rd,
yeah.
I think.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. And to you too.
Thank you.
But I'm like, you know what? I've got like 15 to 20 great summers left. And so this is to me been a transition to family. My family, without complaint, for their entire lives, allowed me to do what I needed and wanted to do from a business perspective, time perspective. And that included racing off road, all things that I wanted. And it just kind of hit me on the head. I'm like, this is my family's time to shine.
Yeah.
Have 5 amazing kids. One's married, got a grandkid on the way. Now it's do things I want to be doing that I think are impactful, could be to my family or people around me, and say no to things that I don't want to be doing or don't need to be doing, and declutter my life a little bit.
How do you do that though? Because you want to say yes.
It's hard for me. It's really hard. But I have started learning.
And also everybody wants a piece of your time.
Yeah.
You just have a lot of people that want something.
I have a lot of people, and I've started to, really take a look. If someone wants a meeting with me, I don't know them. What's it about? Business. It's usually about business most of the time. Not always. And in fact, if it's not, and they want to meet, it's about something else I'd probably usually do. But let me hear what the business is, what industry you're in, what are you doing? And I've started to say no. That's not an industry I'd invest in. No, I don't want to advise.
Yeah.
I'll, take a phone call, but I'm shortening or lessening the number of meetings.
You're not giving away days to those things.
No, I'm not. And it's still hard for me.
Yeah.
Still hard for me to do, but, I've made sure that my assistants know that, hey, look, this is
can screen
person. I like them, but I really don't want to meet. And I know they keep saying we're going to meet, but we're really not going to meet. And so it's a no.
Yeah.
So I've I've boiled my days down to where like I go into work at noon.
So what do you say yes to?
I still love investing. I love investing in deals and in people. So I'm still, and I probably shouldn't be doing this at this point in my investing career. Man, I still like startups.
You love the early stage.
I love young entrepreneurs that are hungry and like desperate to succeed.
Yeah.
So those I would say are the majority of my meetings.
Yeah.
I don't do them all, of course, but I just love the juice that comes from that,
that hustle,
that environment.
It's kind of like all or nothing.
Yeah.
Like it's like my chips are all in the middle on this.
Yeah. I love it. And then others are, I have a family office. I have to have capital that, for my family and future generations, I need to make sure I expand. So I'd say half of my day is, am I going to do this real estate deal or this debt deal? Or am I going to put money into this or not? Taking a look at, markets. I've got people that manage money, capital for our family office. So, just staying on top of that, which by the way, for 28 years, I think I got dumb lucky a lot because I spent 3% of my time investing the capital that we had and 97% of the time operating the business. And, I think anything you do long-term, real estate, stocks, whatever, even private equity, you take enough shots on goal, you're going to do really well if you have patience. So that's probably I don't think
that's it though. I do this professionally now and I see a lot of people that do it professionally. Yeah. There's not many people as good as you. And I think it's intuitive. Like you've been good for a long time. You've been good since you're 21, when it's negotiating a real estate. Like I think what I love about your investing style the most is you have kind of a common sense view of value. It's just kind of pretty straightforward. Yeah. It's like,
it is kind of true.
Yeah. Like there's this value. It's worth double or triple.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty good starting point versus not enough margin of safety. I don't
know. It's kind of funny. Like it's funny you say that. Like, my son, Jake, he's a musician. He writes music, man. I could never write music. He knows like in this upcoming, he has an album he's working on, an upcoming album in the future. He knows what the vibe of that's going to be. He can like see it.
He already knows.
He can feel it.
Yeah.
And I told Jake, I'm like, I see business the way you see music. I can't read music. I'm tone deaf. I can't sing. I can't play instruments. But with business, even when people approach me, maybe just because of so many years of experience,
a lot of reps,
people bring things and I'm like, oh, this is an obvious no.
Yeah.
And here are the reasons. I'm not always right. I mean, I've missed on some deals, but I've not made too many really bad decisions. I think a lot of it comes back to, man, I really back people. That's my, there's certain industries I like more than others, but the truth is like, I'm willing to ape in on something if I really believe in the founder. Yeah. If I really feel like they have the it factor.
Yep.
Doesn't mean all of the, all the tools in the bag, but like the it factor, which means they're going to succeed or die.
Yeah.
And I've been pretty fortunate with people that I've put money in with.
You've had
some great exits,
100x plus.
Yeah. Very good exits.
A lot more, a lot of them. Disproportionate number. It actually
my biggest one's still coming.
It actually
Halia. I'm gonna say it right now, Halia.
It'd actually be fun to get your IRR.
That would be interesting.
Actually go back and historically build out what is your it's got to be ridiculous.
It's good.
It's got to be ridiculous.
What's the one I just? Anyway, what was the one I just did? I did it a while back. I only put like 50 grand into it. I think my exit's like 5 million, which is not a ton of money, but it's crazy return.
That's crazy.
Now it's been like 10 years, but
that's
still
kind
that's
of what they take though. I think that's like a different subject.
It is 10 years, 7 to 10 years.
But Vivint was 10 years.
Yeah.
Like Blackstone from soup to nuts was a decade.
Yep. That's right.
And it's always double. It's always twice as long as you think it will.
5 years is not true. I mean, I'm invested in so many companies. It's crazy. And 5 years is almost never true.
Unless it's Dentive.
That was 30 months. Thank you, Austin and Tom. But that was a good one. That is still a good one. But 7 years is probably normal, but 7 to 10 is probably what you should expect. I mean, that's just a fact. And I think that's in a real estate play. That's in anything.
But talk a little bit about that. Cause like, that's so hard for people.
Yeah.
To sacrifice today for the upside down the road.
It wasn't for me.
It's almost impossible for people. It's like, I can get the car today.
Yeah.
Or not. And I get more and it
was the opposite for me.
Well, I know it was like, it was,
I don't know why either. Like I don't know what it was. And again, maybe it was my mission president had retired when he was 40, ton of cash flow. Like I was never interested in having everything now. I wanted anything and everything down the road. Like I literally would tell Andy, I'm like, here's what we could do. Here's what we have. It's a lot. But if we put him back in, this is what it will become.
But you still do that.
I still do that.
You still do that. Like it's all to degrees.
I'm still crazy.
But it's still that. Like
yeah.
I think anybody from the outside would look at the life that you live today and be like, oh, he's, splurging it up. But I think when you look at a percentage, most of it is going back.
Oh yeah. I'm pretty methodical about, we spend a ridiculous amount of money. I'm embarrassed. I would never ever say what, but we spend a lot of money, but I'm very methodical. I know exactly what I have coming in every month, every quarter, every year. And then the assets that we have. And man, I'm redeploying. We may have a big hit. I am redeploying that capital. And funny, I'm quite aggressive with capital that I make off of a big real estate play or private equity. Maybe it was a venture deal when I did it. I'm quite aggressive with that capital because I'm like, I kind of treat it like house money.
Yeah.
It's like that was handed to me. And if I lose all of it, I didn't have it before anyway.
Yeah.
Preserve the principle and kind of ape in. So I'm maybe, I don't know if it's aggressive at this point, but I will go deep in things that people will not go deep in, like deep.
I've seen it a lot of times.
And, but I go deep and, like I went pretty deep just in Boise a couple years back in just raw land.
Yep.
I have no debt. So
you can ride it. Yeah.
I could care if it takes 5 years for the market. And actually the market's still good there, but, huge, residential housing and multi-use projects. I don't care if it takes me 10 years to exit. Just don't care.
You've done that a lot of times. Like you've had a number of those developments that see the full cycle.
Yeah. The full, and the bottom, they see the bottom.
They see the bottom and then come all the way through it. And then when they come through, it's like, that was a fantastic deal.
Yeah.
Like it worked
almost
out.
Better that it got put on hold than I sold early. And that's how I view kind of everything. I'm like, look, if I'm just patient.
But when you say, like, I remember you saying this to me the other day, and you just hold everything.
Yeah.
Very rarely are you like an active seller, like trying to, monetize as quick as you're very long on everything.
Stock market, like literally, I think, in 2020 when the market got rocked, I sold nothing. What I did is I called Sydney and Elliot and I'm like, how much cash do you guys have? I can't remember. I wasn't $7,000. It was like $170,000. They were sitting on cash.
Yeah.
It's going all into these three stocks. They just flushed it in because the market went down like
way down
50%.
Yeah.
So I try to be, not that you don't ever feel the stomach and the throat a little bit, but I always strive to have myself in a position where I can take advantage of
those cycles.
Opportunities. And I've been fortunate enough to be able to do that. I'm ready for one right now. If a bad downturn happens, everyone says we're going to, I'm
positioned.
It's going to be crazy.
Yeah.
It's going to be good. And if it doesn't happen, I'm still in a good position. I'm getting okay yield on what I call my cash positions.
But you're highly liquid.
Highly liquid.
But you've always I remember coming to Vivint and everybody else had stretched themselves very thin. This was Apex. And you guys had made some decisions where you were positioned very well to take advantage of that down.
Yeah.
And you picked up a lot of talent. In that crash, a lot of core leaders, the Neil Rogers, our group came over. There was a lot of people that ended up being really important to that business.
In fact, I would say we almost more leadership came from other companies, and part of it was like cultivating relationships, but the other was doing the business, trying to run it right, doing what we said we were going to do, being honest. And then people over time were like, okay, you've been saying this for 7 years. It keeps happening. Like, here I am. I mean, Puck Hereford.
Yeah.
I remember, which is embarrassing, but I had my wedding reception at his dad's house, and Puck worked for Pinnacle.
Yeah.
And for like 7 straight years, I tried recruiting the guy, and I just couldn't do it. Finally he did. And now he's a phenomenal leader.
I was talking to a kid that was at a company the other day, and that there's obviously like smoke, like everywhere. And he's like, hey, what would you do? And I just said, who you partner with matters a lot. I was like, my career wouldn't have been my career without having a partner that stayed in business for 20 years.
Yeah.
I just wouldn't have. And I saw it 100 times. Great people, super talented, did their part, but the company didn't do their part, crashes and burns, and you go pick up the pieces. Yeah. You have to go start over. And so it's just, having like that, who you partner with matters, like the same.
Yeah, and I think part of it's having some maturity. Like I laugh at the solar industry. The solar industry is so bizarre right now. The reps are trained, sales reps out there, trained to chase the last penny on a pay scale. And almost always, whoever pays the most goes out of business first.
Yeah.
And doesn't end up paying everything anyway because they can't. For
sure.
And then there's others that have a little bit of wisdom, like I want some stability, security. Obviously, I want upside mobility, but that particular industry, man, it's like flame out after flame out after flame out, and reps think they're making them. They do have the highest pay scale, but they're not making the most money. Yeah. And that was something we always, through our entire careers, we're like, okay, we don't have the highest pay scales, but our people earn the most money.
Yeah. And you don't have the highest pay scale because you're disciplined on the margin that the company needs to have to be healthy.
Yeah.
And not willing to compromise it. And I think other people are like, we'll make a little less and make a little less. And you get to the point where a hiccup in the economy,
it's over.
You're done.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of those in the last, year.
You're making 5%. And all of a sudden you're negative 10%, you're done. Yeah. And everybody loses.
Yeah.
It happens too much.
Yeah. It's interesting. Yeah. You said, how do you cram it all down? The reality is like people will either read about or listen to like best practices or lessons learned. And man, most of us, it takes going through it and making adjustments to actually like really have that become wisdom through their experience. I think there are others that do actually pay attention and listen. And those are usually the ones that rise to the top quickly, and others that, a lot of people just kind of like peter around in mediocrity for years and years and years until they're like, okay, whoa. Now what did Casey Boss say on that podcast again? Oh shoot. Now I'm going to try to implement that. And once they do, and they have real great habits, form work ethic, have, set goals, follow them, readjust, that's when things start to happen. But sometimes it takes people years and years for that to happen. And sometimes it's like too late.
Yeah.
We see that I see that all the time. I have people my age that are now just starting to think about retirement. I'm 55.
I think that's like the hardest cautionary tale is when you see somebody that, didn't make the sacrifices young, and then they're paying for it when they're older. And you're just like, man, like it's not that hard.
Oh, I just realized something. My mom used to always read me this book about this was it a grasshopper or a cricket and an ant or something? And the one wanted to play all day, and the other one, do you know what book I'm talking about?
I don't, but it sounds good.
The ant did the work all summer long and put his food away and stored, and this cricket just wanted to play and screw off my mom. Maybe that's why I was willing to like not eat my marshmallows. Yeah. That is either eat 2 in front of you or have a bag an hour later.
Yeah.
I wanted 100 bags.
You wanted to have the bags.
I wanted all those bags. I wanted those bags.
You got the bags.
So anyway.
Hey, so who do you admire? Like when you think about, hey, I admire this person. It could be in business. It could be just kind of beautiful connection, with God. It could be somebody has
I mean, this is going to sound like cliche, but like my dad passed away 2.5 years ago now. And the further distance I have from him, the more I appreciate the example he lived, not taught, he lived it. Like my dad was like a man of very few words. Everything was action. And the older I've gotten, the older my children have gotten, grandkids on the way, I'm like, the memory of my dad, I'm going to say my mom too. My mom's alive, but I think about him because he's passed away. But man, I am so fortunate to have been born into the family I was born into. That's just dumb luck. I didn't make that happen. Those are circumstances I was born into. Very, very fortunate to have, and not just my parents, but grandparents on both sides, great grandparents that were just good people, treated people right, were kind. I mean, and again, as we're sitting here talking, like my example of, everyone is the same and treat everyone with respect was my dad's dad.
You think that comes from your grandpa?
100%. Yeah. My dad, my grandpa, I remember, I don't know how old I was, but like he was the mayor of Idaho Falls for a long time. Like, I think it was like 14 years. He didn't serve his last full term because of, he had Parkinson's, but I remember sitting on his floor and in his bottom drawer, he had cashews in this big container, and I'd eat the cashews and go get a 10-cent, drink out of his machine. But I just remember person after person coming into my grandpa's office, and he gave everyone 100%. And one thing that resounded with me, hey, Mayor, or hey, Eddie, which whoever it was would call him something different. How are you doing? And he would always say, I've never had a bad day. He would say that relentlessly. I've never had a bad day. And then the respect he gave people. And I remember my junior year, he passed away. And I didn't even go into the viewing because he was my best friend. Like I couldn't see him in the casket. I never did see him. But I remember that the viewing was 2 days long because thousands of people came to see him because he was awesome.
Yeah.
I remember like we walked, some diner in some south of, I guess, east of Idaho Falls. We walked in, my grandpa would be like, I'm here. Everything's good. Just it's just who he was. Just, owned, he wasn't a prideful person. I mean, he was a tailor. He had no money. Yeah. But he had everything, he had the personality, he had the love for people, gave people his time.
They could just feel it.
Yeah. I mean, I've been very fortunate to have had people around me that like, I'm like, okay, that's something about this feels right. Yeah. And I probably you said, is this learned or did you have it? I probably learned it watching other people, you know? So, which I think is another, like, what's a lesson everyone can learn? Man, pay attention to the people who are having success. What are they doing? Yeah. That's what you did. I mean, it wasn't.
It's what I still do.
You didn't go recreate the wheel. Yeah. You're like, okay, their wheel is rubber. It's not wood. I want the rubber wheel.
For sure.
And how do I recreate that? And you just supercharged it.
I mean, for me, it's been a recipe, and it's like a cheat code. It's go find whoever's the best in that field and interview them, and they'll tell you gladly. Yeah. This is exactly how I see. This is my mental map. This is my philosophy. This is and get 4 opinions and then cobble together your own, but don't everybody will give you advice. Yeah. And you should take it from like one person out of 100 because that's the person that's excelling in that category that you're interested in. So I think it's, for me, I would put so much of my life's happiness and also like just physical success and from paying attention to people that I admire and trying to like copy them shamelessly. I don't even you do it better than anybody else. I'm going to adopt that and make that my own.
Yeah.
And I look back over the course, I'm 41 and I'm like, most of my habits aren't my habits. I can pick exactly who they're from. You know what I mean?
I love it.
I'm so grateful for it,
Smart. Because, you learn, straight learning from experience is like kind of a long road.
It's a long, and sometimes you can't get enough.
Yeah.
You think about like when we were talking about those Vivint days, how do you teach somebody securitized debt? How do you teach somebody we're going to have a failed process at like the 1-inch line?
Yeah.
How do you teach somebody we're going to, go public through a SPAC? How do you you don't teach that stuff. That stuff, you learn it. And most people never get those life lessons. Those are very limited tracks. But there are stuff that, is more general, more principle that you can learn from people.
And just fast track it. Get past it because you can, because someone else has done it. And you've done that as good as anyone I've ever seen, Casey.
Let me finish with one question. So if you could go back and give advice to Todd at 21 years old and you're pulling out the think bigger, what advice do you give yourself? Like if you're sitting down and like really counseling yourself on like, because you have this, you got Jake, you got some of these young kids that are coming into it. What's the one piece of advice that you're leaving?
Look, I've said this. I definitely have been fortunate to be surrounded by great people I have for a long time, but I held on. There are people that, if I'm talking about excelling in business sooner, faster, there were people that I knew weren't right for the company, right for the position, had been outgrown by the company or the position, sometimes several year before I finally made the call to, move
transition.
Yeah. And there are definite periods of time where I just didn't know how to do that as well as I did in the end.
Yeah.
And then it's not out of, having a mean heart. A lot of times when it's time for someone to move on, they want out just as desperate as you want them out.
Yeah.
So you're like giving them some relief.
It's the right thing for them.
It is the right thing for them. And so that's the one thing. I mean, there is nothing you can do in life to overcome being surrounded with people that don't have the skills and capabilities you need to get to where you want to get to. And that's not being cold-hearted. That's just, because if you do that, if you don't do it, a lot of people are negatively impacted.
Yeah.
Because we had hundreds and then thousands and then tens of thousands affected negatively by the wrong person in that position. But I got better and better at that. And had I learned that a lot earlier, man, there are people in business, in companies that you think you have alignment because we all have stock in the company. We're all getting paid from the cash flows, but they hinder and almost block the success.
Yeah, it's crazy.
They don't want it to happen for who knows what reasons they have.
But there's kind of the opposite too. Like Josh Crittenden's a guy that I think about that I'm like, this kid came in to when we were working at Vivint. He was pretty junior. And by the end, he was indispensable.
Yeah.
Like he literally created so much value, anybody that he could touch, that he kind of everybody kept dumping stuff on his plate. And I'm like, you have those people in the org too, that it's like, how do you get them in like the most senior role that you can get them in? Because they're just like moving mountains.
Yeah.
And they get bogged down in organizations. I remember during COVID, just you like hammering G&A, like literally like a buzzsaw.
Yeah.
Cause you're like, we got to lean this thing out. Like it just, and another conversation for another day, but it's like companies get chubby.
Oh yeah.
Like if you don't watch it, they just get chubby.
Bloat.
Yeah.
It's like, project creep, people creep. It's just like, it just happens. And if you're not on top of everything all the time, that's why it's fun running a business. There's so many moving parts. And if you're good at running kind of an orchestra type situation, looking and feeling and hearing, is this right or is this wrong? And a lot of it is, you said it earlier, a lot of it is intuition. You don't necessarily know every detail inside your organization, your company, but you can feel it.
But I think you were and it's going back to like being willing to go talk to the cook and talking to the first year rep. And like, you always just kind of had your finger at the pulse of what was really happening. Not what people were telling you that was happening with the company, but like what was really happening within the organization. And I think it just made you a better leader. I think like those insights, people tell you what you want to hear.
Oh yeah.
Like they want to please you.
And they only tell you the best.
Yeah.
The best stuff. None of the reality. Last thing I want to leave, again, this was a conversation earlier today in one of my meetings about, what creates the most successful, because I think a lot of people on this podcast are listening to it or probably want to run their own company, their own organization at some point. The best skill they can learn, sales. People want to like avoid it, not deal with it. They want to end their sales career. If you're running a company or, a business like you have, it's all sales.
Yeah.
Getting a deal, structuring a deal, hiring employees, raising capital, creating vision.
For sure.
It's all sales. So if you're not good at it,
you're selling all day, every day. Like,
all the time.
All day, every day. Like selling your wife on why you're a great husband and selling your kids on why, and it's that
all the time.
Always on, always persuading, always pushing. And I think people that don't embrace that, you're literally shooting yourself in the foot. You're like, this is your opportunity. Like the CEO is the chief evangelist.
Yeah.
Like if no one's going to believe in that company more than you believe.
Yeah, that's right.
In that company. And the vision's never going to be bigger than your vision.
That's right.
Anyway.
Okay, man.
Always so fun catching up. We'll make sure we do it again.
Yep.
Thanks for coming, brother.
Thank you. Love you.